think we should say happy holidays. It's a season after all. Good morning to you all and welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Well, I guess it's the last week of work for many people in the National Assembly. It's a race to see how they can quickly finish and pass the budget. People are still going for budget defense.
I wish I was one of those many people.
Yes, I also know many companies too. You know, this is going to be one last week. And then in the markets, oh dear Lord, do I want to see what's going on in the market? No, not the stock market. No, not the not that market. I mean the market where we go to buy pepper and crayfish. That particular market. Yeah. Only God knows what's going to be looking like this week. But however it looks, good morning and welcome. Compliments of the season. I'm Malkwe Ogunyu.
Hello. Yes, and I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome. It's December 18. It's a time to celebrate, a season to be jolly, particularly here at Channels Television, as we celebrate Channels Television's win of the Station of the Year for the 16th time. 16th time. Now, if that is not something to celebrate, I mean, call it, what do you want to call it now? Call it a way of saying this is our own celebration. Let's listen.
Arise TV, Channels TV, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the NBC Prize for Television Station of the Year 2023 goes to...
And the winner is... Channels TV. Channels TV.
Channels TV.
Channels Television has won this award for 16 times between year 2000 and this year. Won it in 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004, 2008, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2021, and 2022. Now, there's that song I wish we could play. This isn't radio. But, guys, it's stand up for the champions. Congratulations to everyone.
Indeed, you can say that again.
I thought it was old.
I thought
you called for the music. I didn't hear it.
Well, he said it's not radio. But hey, I can sing it anyway if you want me to. The only thing I'm missing this morning is our champagne and glasses. Well, it's certainly going to come. But we have to thank you, our viewers, who constantly and consistently put us on our toes to continually deliver. We do not take it for granted at all. The criticisms, the well-dones, the feedback we'll get, every single thing. It's not easy. It's not easy in the market space, I can tell you that. But the desire to serve you, the desire to continue to be the people's voice is what pushes us. And we're glad that at least we have something to show for it. And this is, no matter how many times we win it, we will never take it for granted. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. Just want to say thank you to everyone out there. We know that it is indeed, we will have a job to do, a nation to build, basically, because we all know that we're all grappling with the challenges. As much as authorities say they want to do the right things and get all of us out of the challenges we face now, we know that it's a huge environment, a huge challenging environment for the media, broadly speaking now, to function in. And so even our colleagues across board, we know the amount of work that they all put in to ensure that things work here. It's not like you could just go ahead and activate the FOI when you need information and it comes and drops just like that. It doesn't work that way. It's not a flip the switch kind of scenario. So, yes, indeed, much as we appreciate everyone for at least considering us worthy for you to let us into your homes. We do not take them for granted, as my colleagues have also highlighted here. But we will continue to do what we can to ensure that above all else, our nation is the better for it. No matter what else, no matter what we do, we appreciate you and our colleagues across board. Congratulations to you all and to everybody, because yes, this is indeed you out there doing this. Okay, let's take you through some of the dailies here, and we're going to start with New Telegraph this morning. Aviation FG malls 50% fare subsidy. Look, it's worthy of note. It has indeed. It's sometimes you just wonder what goes on out there. Why these things can't be addressed? Why do they keep soaring? The ticket aviation cost, ticket prices for the airlines. So now, 50% subsidy. It's much as, of course, consumers would like a slash, a huge one at that, not just in aviation, across board. But for this, where is this fund going to come from? What's the structure of this subsidy? How is it going to play out? How long will it be for? Will it be effective? How do we know that they won't tell us that? Last time we tried subsidy for the petroleum industry, the quote-unquote, what was the name they call them? Is it the cabals or oil thieves? Or I don't know what I can't remember now, but they said it wasn't achieving the aim for which it was meant for.
Yeah, but Chamberlain, this season, we've seen families unable to travel as a result of the high airfares. People are, just staying put because they cannot by road. They fear the security situation by road, despite assurances, and then also the state of the roads. We know that not all the roads have been fixed, so you really put out all your options, and then when you look at ticket fares and see that maybe a family of 4 has to almost pay almost 750 between 750 to 800,000 naira to be able to travel from Lagos to Abuja. 800,000 naira in this season
and then,
for a family of 4.
Sometimes you wonder, so what is the rationale? What template do these airlines even use to fix these prices? Because if it's, for instance, certain other routes are way cheaper than some of the other routes, and you see passengers who don't understand some of this is ask huge questions, and of course they have to, because look, times have changed, the world has changed, so people want to see it break down. And then the other parts of this is, if you're able to see some of this breakdown, the huge tax component for these airlines. That's why some of them tell you, that's why it's so huge.
That's why it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So maybe federal government could give them tax breaks. But even if they did that, would it really reflect in the ticket pricing? Because if you say, okay, give them tax breaks, will they include that as part of their profits as the airlines? Will they take those breaks? I mean, will it really affect the ticket fares? Because they can say, oh, well, we've been given a break. It means we have much more as a company to declare as a profit.
Well, that break, it's, well, maybe not exactly a break, but because if you give them a break and then after a while you go back to that, don't give people and then take certain things back. Of course, there'll be a lot of complaints about that. If they probably slash it so that it stays like that moving forward, and of course it should affect the bottom line. It should affect the prices of tickets, because if you buy the tickets in other parts of the country, you see the difference. You see the huge difference, how cheap it is. Even from London here, back here, you get to see all of those things. So, but here, it's unfortunately, you can't buy a ticket from there if you have to originate from here. So
yes, you can't. Sadly,
that's because they know some of these things. So, but look at this, Minister. Airline operators hold strategic meeting. The better. Travelers to fill forms. Information will be sent to CBN for 50% ticket price refund. Okay, I don't know how that's going to work, because the CBN is not a deposit money bank. So are they set up for this kind of function? So that would be a big question.
Big question.
So why is it that the banks themselves can't even perform this function? Why do we have to go to the CBN? Is that the only option we've got? Or is it the last option we've got? It shouldn't be the first option, should it? So all of these questions, I imagine this committee will look into it. So that explains why all of those clear-outs in the aviation was done, probably. So now, they better get results. Because if they told Mr. President, look, I want to achieve this, but I can't do it with this. Okay.
It would be great to hear the
now
details.
that you have this, go and do it.
We can encourage people to pick up a copy of New Telegraph, but it will be great to also hear details from the minister's mouth as to what precisely they're cooking up.
Okay, and then speaking of politics, look at this at the bottom strip here. 26 defected lawmakers' seats Court stops INEC from conducting fresh election in Rivers. And then you see CUPP alleges secret suit to return pro-Wike lawmakers. It is an alleged allegation, but who knows? You get to see a lot of these things as we progress. And then, do you see the material circulating over the judiciary? New persons who are appointed? I guess maybe we'll look for it and see how I can highlight that. But that's no Telegraph this morning.
Okay, well, I'm a little spoiled for choice right now, but let me take a look at The Guardian, a little partial to their headlines these days. Well, The Guardian is still focusing on the economy, as always. Federal government firms trade jobs as illegal expatriates take over economy. That's a lead story right here. The page 6 read for you. And somebody has said that we should take a second look at this term, expatriates. I mean, why is it that when foreigners come here and take jobs, they're labeled expatriates? But when we go over there and we're about to get jobs, do we get the same label, or are we just termed foreigners? Are we just termed foreign workers? And that's where it ends. Because oftentimes, what you label people, sometimes also reflects the value you place on them. So this federal government firms trade jobs as illegal expatriates. It doesn't say illegal foreigners. Illegal expatriates take over economy. Is the lead story this morning, and they have this. Okay, look at this. 13,829 foreigners were issued EQ permits, while 1,161 business permits were given to foreign companies to operate in Nigeria between 2019 and 2022. Now, 13,000 expatriate quota, 1,600 work permits issued in 3 years. Expatriates issued Nigerian diplomatic passports. Is that allowed? Is that part of the deal? I don't know. Page 6 is where you'll get details. I think in Nigerian immigration, you'd also take a second look at the front pages of The Guardian this morning. And you also see here 150,000 expatriates in Nigeria. That's according to the Ministry of Interior. So it'll be very interesting to see, who qualifies as an expatriate. If we want to keep using that term, does a foreigner who come in here to do the job that a Nigerian can ordinarily do, should that person also be termed an expatriate? Those who come and do the job that even our blue-collar people should be doing, should those people be also termed expatriate? Should they fall under that category? Assuming we decide that that's the only term we want to keep going with, or page 6 might offer you the details this morning, but that's what we're looking at on the front page of The Guardian. You also have a bit of politics. Pro-Wike lawmakers re-strategize to oust Fubara, vow to reclaim Rivers. Kano residents won't accept injustice, Deputy Governor warns. Serap sues INEC for failing to prosecute electoral offenders in Bayelsa, Kogi, Imo. Yeah, so for you failing to sue those people, we will sue you. I like that. Page 5 is where you find details. Profligate governors, political class, pauperizing citizens is their editorial this morning. We'll leave it there for The Guardian newspapers.
Look at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. It's keeping its eyes squarely, primarily on the case in Rivers State, the Rivers Assembly crisis. Rivers State government, PDP, G27 lawmakers disagree over seats. I thought there were just 2 disagreements, but hey, look at the writers. Are defection constitutional? Rivers PDP in crisis. That's according to Mewule. G27's claim mischievous. PDP remains united, according to Damagum. Your seats remain vacant. Rivers State government tells factional legislators. Rivers APC will be strong, according to Tony Okocha, CTC chairman. Alleged draft of Abuja court's judgment surfaces. Then APC must take responsibility for crisis in Rivers. That's according to Lukman. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Look beyond the picture. How MDAs, corporations failed to insure 80% FG assets. That story is on page 19. You may want to please check what the details of that are. Some years ago, we found out that according to between the ICPC and the office and the budget office, there are 1,500 plus ministries, departments, and agencies. Which ones among them failed to do this? And what are the consequences of not insuring these assets? The details you'll find on page 19 of the paper this morning. Electricity generation drops by 4% in 3 months. Consequences, please? Do I need to even say, ask that question? Because I think the answer is pretty obvious. Well, Mr. and Mrs. this morning, you're going to have to read it yourself and to find out exactly what Mrs. is wishing Mr. on his birthday and what his response is. That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Take a look at leadership next. Insecurity. Concern as Safe School Initiative gets zero budget. UN, World Bank, EU express worry. Nigeria, mum. And then you see 168 Zamfara schools remain shut. Back to CSOs. And then congratulations, Professor Ochegbu emerges Cambridge Varsity president, and that's indeed really, really good one right there, because you have this kind of narrative. You have several of this out there, but it turns out that, look, we will be the ones to celebrate them. Because if we don't, others may just feel, okay, if you live a vacuum, they fill it with the negative side of the whole thing, because, there's always that 5% in any country, that will always go south. But people like this, you cannot celebrate them enough. And I think society should leverage or take a cue in terms of ensuring that professionals are given their pride of place in our society, so that certain other people don't look up and see a negative example, and that's what they aspire to be. And then when that is the case, of course, they'll begin to cut corners and do whatever they can to get there. But if they know that, look, if you break the time, or if you break the laws, you face the music, there has to be consequences of certain actions. And by the way, what happened to that Asman investigation where they said they found water tank? I'm just wondering. I don't know if I missed it. I may need to go back to it. Those are the kind of things that you want to be sure you get to the bottom of. If it's from the suppliers, it means we have a problem. If they're selling what they ought not to sell, bigger problem.
Consequences.
So how do we know that all of the other airlines, are we doing to make sure they don't fall prey? Same scenario. All right, that's leadership this morning.
Well, Daily Trust is what I'm looking at next for you, and look at what they have here. Zamfara community under siege as bandits strike. Military vehicles, police outpost burned. 3 persons killed, 16 injured. State government to hire 4,200 security guards. So that's the lead story on the front page of Daily Trust this morning. They also have a big story with the picture they're showing you right there. A long queue at a cooking gas refill station in Abuja yesterday. Well, I don't know what has caused this particular one. I bought cooking gas pretty easy yesterday. So I think it will also depend on the community, or maybe it's scarce in some areas, but I think it might be something for the regulatory authorities to look into, to see how it is that people can get this commodity. Everything mustn't be difficult. Right now, petrol is only an NPC that is selling at 617 Naira per litre in Abuja. A lot of other stations are selling, but they're selling at much higher. So if you want to avoid the queues, you have to go to the other stations. If you want it cheaper, you go to the government-owned station. Could that be the situation with cooking gas? Well, I do not think that this particular commodity should be difficult to get. So hopefully somebody will take a look at what Daily Trust is reporting this morning. And you can also tell us what the situation is at your end. Is it easy to get cooking gas? Are you able to get the fuel that you need? Fuel in your vehicle, fuel for your kitchen, even if you don't get anyone. Fuel for the kitchen is very important, especially in this season. So as much as possible, do let us know what it is like at your end. You also find a number of other stories right here. Afenifere raises alarm over rising kidnappings in Southwest. That is right there. Okay, this is something we should highlight. NMA gives federal government 45-day ultimatum to review doctors' salary. Okay, even me, I want a review, but 45 days ultimatum, pretty steep. Page 27 is where you find details. I mean, you should remember, NMA says we're not a union, you know? So maybe a strike will not follow this threat, but let us hope the federal government listens. There have been wage awards given according to those that we've spoken to in many areas, but according to them, they also say that these wage awards have not been reflected in the salaries that have been paid people. Please, federal government, state government, whoever it is that is giving wage award, ensure that the wages which you have promised people to pay them are reflected, especially in this season. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
The Nigerian Observer is next, and I think it is one of the consequences of not doing what you're asking, Maokwe. That's what the Nigerian Observer leads with this morning, and which also concerns something entirely different. Bleak Yuletide looms as Naira scarcity worsens amid rising currency in circulation. That's the rider to that story. It begins on the front page, continues on page 4. And I'm not sure how tenable it is or how acceptable it is for many people who hear that the explanation given by the government agency, the CBN, that it's because some people are hoarding the cash. If people are hoarding cash, and it's from what we gathered as at March this year, as at September this year, the currency in circulation is up to 2.76 trillion naira, up from 1.68 trillion in March this same year. Isn't it then some kind of distrust in the system or lack of confidence in the system when people are hoarding the cash? I mean, I'm trying to understand how that is tenable to any Nigerian, that it's because some people are hoarding how much cash now? Trillions of naira, and consequently we are not able to, people are having difficulty getting cash to do business. Well, so many people are using electronic means of payments of anything, but hey, how about that fellow who wants to buy Bolly or what they call in UI or OAU, dangerous burger, and he has to make a transfer to pay 500 naira? I don't know, but please, can we have some more tenable reason for why this is happening? How can we have cash scarcity in the economy? It is the biggest in Africa, isn't it? The Nigerian economy. More answers we're hoping for. Right above the nameplate, Obaseki's business-friendly policies give boost to aviation industry in Edo. And the rider says as airlines into Benin Airport rises from 1 to 9 in 7 years. Cheering news. Right beside the nameplate, work begins on east-west other FG roads as rains cease. Find the details of that on page 4 of the paper. That's the Nigerian Observer this morning.
Well, Business Day says Huddles dog FG's plan to sell 40% shares in discos. I think they said it's about time, or it's come to that time where they might need to revisit the agreement or renew the agreement, whichever way, I mean. So that's why all of this is making the rounds. What do they do? So we're hoping that proper diligence or due diligence will be done to ensure that if we need to make any changes whatsoever moving forward, it is or should be such that there will be significant improvements to the outcome electricity, not just generation, but transmission.
There are plans to restructure
Big headache.
TCN. There are plans to restructure TCN, and that is generating some concerns already. Mixed reactions. We'll see how the details of that, pans out in the coming days. So I don't think that will be done under the dark, under the table. It will be something that should be transparent, and people should understand what the expectations are of the transmission company of Nigeria and the decentralization plans they have for it.
All right. So plans everywhere. Plans to sell shares for Discos, plans for TCN. So we hope all the plans just come to fruition. And then for this big story of theirs here, you see insider abuse, hoarding, leave banks with cash shortage. So maybe that explains, maybe that might be the explanation you've been looking for.
Hoarding to what end?
You never know. Insider abuse, and then, so that's just what it is right now. It's up to the authorities now to rein in anyone who thinks that they are above the law. That's business day.
First, there was us being warned by the CBN that counterfeiters are taking over the space. Be careful. There's fake Naira notes around now. But when there isn't sufficient cash, this is what they will cash in on the gaps and see how it is that they can fill it in. Well, let's take a look at what's happening right here in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory. The Abuja Inquirer has details for us. National priority budget, how FCT was denied funds for critical projects in 2023. That's a lead story right there. What precisely happened? You might want to see details somewhere inside the paper. And of course, the story with Chimling highlighted initially. Nigerian-born Prof. Ijoma named Cambridge Varsity president. It's a page 3 read. The president indeed did congratulate her yesterday. World Bank, inflation, slow growth pushed 24 million Nigerians below poverty. So that story is on page 3 of the paper. This is coming from the World Bank. On the one hand, they say we're not yet buying petrol fully up at to be buying it at 750. Then you now still say that inflation, slow growth is pushing Nigerians. But maybe you should read it all in the context. Read it all in the context. Page 3 is where you'll find details. Let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and it is talking about money. And this is just hoping, one way or the other, that this actually gets somewhere. Look at the headline. World Bank finances Nigeria's renewable energy sector with $750 million. Whoa. Okay, look at the riders. 17.5 million Nigerians to get solar and power grids as electricity subsidy gulps 204.5 billion naira in quarter 3 of 2023. Well, that's a story, is quite interesting. It'll be good, actually, to find out from the federal government agency in charge of rural electrification, the Rural Electrification Agency, how far so far? How far have we gone on that project, and what's the shortfall that we have to cover? Because we're talking about food preservation and all those things. Rural electrification can, I believe, do a lot in that regard. Plus the fact that many local government areas are struggling by themselves. Look above the nameplate, 15,000 Lagos traders get 50,000 Naira cash support as Sanwo-Olu launches market palliative scheme. That word palliative again. Anyway, find out the details of how it is being disbursed on page 23 of the Nigerian News Direct. And beside that one, inflation rate, LCCI proffers policy mix to ensure Naira stability. Find the details of that on page 9 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And with that, we have come to the end of this part of the program. We're back right after now. There are some issues lined up. Please stay with us.
failing state. Nigeria is a failing state. And if we don't take care and we put it in jeopardy, we can't safeguard it, then the worst can happen, God forbid. So my argument is that between now and 2027, we need to pull our heads together, have a reasoned, rational, evidence-based process of restructuring the Nigerian Federation. And to my mind, the major thing we need to do is actually to deconcentrate power and the resources from the federal tier and spread them to the state and local governments. Even if all we do is to go back to the way in which power was distributed in the 1963 Constitution, we should do that. But I even think we should go beyond that, because we need to reduce the power of the federal government, because in fact that power of the federal government, in which whoever is elected president controls virtually all the resources, creates the reality, but more importantly the perception that those are used against one group vis-a-vis the other.
Welcome back. Mr. Sahil Lukman joins us here this morning. He's a former Vice Chairman, APC Northwest. Good morning. Thank you for coming out today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Morgan.
To a large extent, what you had won previously seems, a lot of it seems to resonate with what Professor Jiga was talking about there, that if we don't do the right things from now to 2027, it may just be bleak. He just spoke about the challenges we face, how he thinks that we are a failing state. But you, about 3 days ago or thereabout, had said that the APC, your party, may lose power in 2027 if they don't do the right things. Because you also did say it appears as though they are very comfortable. They seem to think that they can do anything and get away with it. What gives you this impression, though? What have you noticed?
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I think it is important to emphasize the issue. The critical challenge facing us as a nation is to make our democracy work. After 24 years of uninterrupted democracy, we seem to be stuck in one place. Citizens are not happy with leaders. Expectations of citizens are not being met. We've gone full cycle. After 2011 election, 2012, 2013, we created excitement by proving that PDP has failed. Citizens believe in us as a party when APC came about. And they gave us that confidence. For the first time, we had an election that was not in dispute. The sitting president who lost the election conceded defeat even before the votes the final collation were done. Now, unfortunately, we are not able to build on that. Listening to Professor Jega talking about issues of restructuring, these are issues for me as a party. We sat down for the first time and set up a committee under the leadership of Malam Nasir El-Rufai, came up with what we call the True Federalism Report that did justice. Unfortunately, the party failed to discuss it. And that was a report which, before we even adopted it as a committee, was shared with the president, shared with the party leadership, and they didn't see any problem with it. But taking it forward, we were not able to do that. So the main challenge is really how do we make our democracy work? And my view, rather than sit down and lament, is to begin to creatively think in terms of how do we engage leaders differently. This cycle, we are not happy with leaders, let's go for election, change them, and we get back to the same old mode, leaders not doing the right thing, I don't think that is what we want.
In trying to understand the why of all of this, is there any reason, do you understand why wasn't that electoral reform or restructuring reports led by RFI, why wasn't it discussed in the party?
Look, I think, like I've argued before, as a party, there are many shades of opinion, many shades of belief, ideas, and in some ways, since the formation of APC, it appeared to be stuck, almost controlled by the conservative bloc. They always have their way. This is a party that, if you read the manifesto that we have, it's a manifesto oriented to have a party that is social democratic in orientation, which means basically the priority will be social services. Now, since we won election in 2015, the closest we came to that was the issue of social investment, which a lot of funding went into it. But in terms of getting the desired result, which is about reducing poverty and whatnot, getting our education system, health sector much more functional, we've not made much progress. If we want to be honest, we even regressed. So I think, and for me, this is the point why I had to start my advocacy early enough. Rather than sit down, my belief, we didn't make the mistake to have President Asuwaju in the first place as the presidential candidate of the party. And I don't think Nigerians made a mistake by electing him. But sincerely speaking, having elected him, having become president, it's not for us to sit back when he takes the wrong decision or take decisions that don't produce the kind of result we want. We applaud him. I think we have to be very critical. We have to shout to the high heavens so that he is able to correct it. And there are many, he has taken many right decisions. If you remember the first 1 week or 2 weeks of his tenure, it produced excitement and his approval rating was high. But thereafter, we crash. For instance, removal of fuel subsidy. Everybody welcomed it. But taking the next action that will produce the desired result is what appears to be failing. We must push. I'm a member of the party and I'm a supporter of President Asuwaju. I want him to succeed. I'm not going to sit back and wait until he fails. Then I start saying he has failed and produce some rationalization. We have to just wake up and look, for our democracy to work, the critical issue is that the most important institution of democracy must function, which is the political party.
I've heard several people, some people, also complain that they wonder if the party listens to members with voices like yours. Because if they don't, how then do we expect them to listen to people who are not in their party? Because they will think that they're just critics. Do they really listen to voices like yours?
My view is that they definitely listen, they hear it, they may not accept to work with it, but it's not for us because they don't work with it to retire or resign and just say, okay, let them continue doing what they want to do. For me, which is why, the issue, we have to make our choices in life. Many people's choices are limited to the question of what they can get at a particular moment. Now, one of the questions I keep asking, and I reflected it in several of my writing, is it really the democracy we fought for? Did we kick military out of power simply to end up having almost emperors as our rulers in the name of democracy? Now, if we complain, for instance, under former President Buhari, because his background is military, we can rationalize it. Asuwaju background is not military, and he has some antecedent that prove that he is committed to democratic values. So if he's doing things that are not producing the result, what is responsible for that? For instance, I mean, look. My argument now, which is why I started the advocacy, I mean, we campaigned based on the fact that we said, well, Asuwaju is a talent hunter. He proved that in Lagos. We want that to be reflected in Nigeria. I mean, some of the disappointment, which I didn't hide, was that when it came to the question of appointing ministers and other political appointees, we didn't see that play out. It's business as usual. Politics took over everything. And if we don't come out to remind him, the Asuwaju we wanted to preside over the affairs of this country may not show up to the end of his tenure in 2027, which means at the end, the country that will be, citizens will be shortchanged. And I don't want that to happen. I want the Asuwaju that we believe was the person we wanted to be the president of Nigeria to really show up from the beginning. And unless we can't get it if it is about applauding him, everything he does is right, finding rationalization. I mean, look, one of the things I expected, which even the background report you presented about restructuring proved that we are not even starting on that. I expected the coming of Asuwaju will produce some excitement, produce some national debate about where do we go. And then on the basis of that, government and the leadership, President Asuwaju himself, are harvesting from the public debate, getting ideas. I mean, look, democracy is not about the wisdom of an individual. It's about competition. Competition not just in terms of election, competition even in terms of ideas.
Well, I know that there is a lot to unpack from the little that you've said so far. I mean, you've spoken about political parties and their role. You've also touched on our democracy as a whole, and also restructuring. Let's focus a bit more on political parties, which you've been a part of. I mean, I think you're still a part of the APC.
I'm still, yes.
You're former vice chairman of the APC in the Northwest. And I know that only recently there's been some focus on strengthening political parties and giving them the support that they need to be able to function. You have said they're one of the most important elements in a democracy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why do you believe so? And what precisely would you say is particularly wrong with political parties now that need to be fixed?
Well, first, I mean, why parties are the most important institution is because first, they are not expected to only field candidates for election. They are also expected to hold the candidates accountable when they win election. Now, that takes me to the most critical issue. When parties' organs are not functioning, you cannot hold elected people accountable. Your relationship with the elected people will be weak. And the truth about it, which has been the basis of my advocacy, even while I was in the leadership of the party, we must get our parties to respect their constitution. As it is now, almost all our parties don't respect their constitution. Organs of parties are not meeting. In the case of my own party, they are practically frozen.
Why is that?
Because, your constitution, the constitution of APC, for instance, says National Executive Committee, which is the next highest, apart from the convention, the second highest organ, is supposed to meet every quarter. We were elected under the leadership of Senator Abdullahi Adamu in March 2022. Up to August 2023, we had only one National Executive Council meeting, Executive Committee meeting. Now, after on August 3rd or 4th, I think on 4th, another executive committee meeting was held, which was what produced Dr. Abdullah Ganduje as the chairman. From August 4th to now, this is almost 4 months of getting into the 5th month. We are due for another National Executive Committee meeting. There is no sign that we are going to have anyone soon. The National Working Committee has appropriated the powers of all organs. They are taking. Meanwhile, this is an administrative body. Now, one of the things, I think in their wisdom, the OWASE panel, as far back as 2007, 2008, through this danger, recommended the unbundling of INEC, out of which they recommended the creation of Political Parties Regulatory Commission. Now, that has not happened. Now, one of the critical problems facing political parties, for instance, the issue of funding is taken for granted. All our parties don't have defined sources of funding. They depend largely on elected leaders to provide the funding, which reduces them to almost subordinate players. Now, once that is the case, you can't expect them to control people who fund them. Now, these are some of the issues that must be corrected. I tell you, for me, I mean, after my resignation from the National Working Committee, what I decided to do was to sit down and reflect and document at least some of our experiences from 2001 to 2003 in the party, with all the contestation that
I mean, 2001 or 2021?
Sorry, 2021. Thank you for the correction. You know, because as a party, if we didn't wake up to really put our foot down, first President Aswaju wouldn't have emerged as the candidate of the party. You know, so we went through. So my after documenting all this, my position is still, okay, we must engage ourselves, engage leaders of the party, to remind them why we are coming. We must now begin to shape our action moving into the future, to always be vigilant. And I mean, former President Buhari, if we have allowed him to do what they call consensus thing, I mean, he will get away with it. We all stood up and engaged him until he agreed to say, okay, let's go to convention and elect our presidential candidate. So we must continue to engage whoever is the president, including President Aswaju, so that we get him to do the right thing. That is the only way citizens can have the benefit of democracy. It's not by propaganda that you sit down and say democratic dividend. And
what are some of the things that right now are giving you concern about how the country is being governed?
Look, I mean, it's not, I don't need to label too much to demonstrate. First, living condition is getting really, really bad. You know, we are almost at the verge of having rebellion in the street. People are struggling for what to eat now. And it become academic to talk of dividends of democracy when and the crash in terms of living condition happened in the last 6 months. You know, inflation, and up to now is going higher and higher. So as a ruling party, it is our business to quickly arrest the situation and ensure that life begin to return to normal and citizens begin to feel better. You know. So these are, if you ask me my concern, this is my concern.
All right, Ayo has got questions for you as well. Go ahead, Ayo.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, so one of the questions that was raised by Professor Jega in that comment that we listened to earlier was that maybe we should begin to rethink our presidential system of government being that it is as costly as it is and quite telling. From where you sit, because there are other countries of the world that practice the presidential system and they are doing fairly well with it. The United States, of course, is one classic case. France is practicing the presidential system of government and also. In your opinion and from where you sit, what is wrong with our presidential system of government?
Well, you see, we can go on and on debating whether we should continue with the presidential system of government or not. My view is that take the worst leader we have in Nigeria, take the person to US, where things, for instance, institutions are functioning. The person is likely to succeed. Bring the best from US to Nigeria, the person will fail. So I don't want to really indulge ourselves with the debate over whether it is presidential system of government or parliamentary system of government. I think the challenge we have is to really focus on making key institutions to work. I believe with all the cost, it is possible to make the presidential system of government in Nigeria work. Part of the big challenge, look. We must get our leaders to be selfless. Some of the excesses you see is likely because leaders overindulge themselves. The other thing, we must also get our leaders to be quite ambitious. There is a clip, I think it's, what is his name, Olisa Bakoba, that was addressing the president, making the point next year's budget must be not less than 100 trillion naira. Now, as a nation of over 200 million people, how can we continue to live with a budget of 27 trillion naira, which is less than $30 billion? Our counterpart, check the budget of Brazil, for instance. Brazil run a budget of over $200 billion. Many countries at our level. So part of the issue, part of the challenge, I think I will reduce it to two. If you want any system to work in Nigeria, leaders must be selfless and they must be ambitious to really ensure that the resources of this country are harnessed and deployed to develop the country.
Well, the reason that question is relevant at this point is part of what you raised earlier, when you were saying that you want the president to succeed, but then there are elements who seem to get in the way. How do we navigate that? There are those who have also pointed to our political culture as being faulty. Anytime any party is in power, criticism is fine, but when the only thing it wants to do is just to shoot down whatever ideologies the government of the day has, some people put questions on that. So in the way we administer ourselves, be it at the federal level or at the state level, what do we need to amend? We employ just the president, but he has to also govern so many other ministries, departments, and agencies, more than 500 of them, which form the engine of the federal government. So those who influence things around the president, what would be your advice to them? And in the event that we're not able to control these people who are mostly faceless, what does Nigeria do, or what do Nigerians do?
I think that is a very important question, but it's not easy to give a straight answer to it. Perhaps my best answer will be to say that we must, as much as, and this is where the party comes in. If the party is functioning very well, we can hold people to account. And we can influence, because look, as a party, APC, one of our biggest weakness is inability to influence action of leaders, especially president. We have had situations, the last election, for instance, in which we had major interest. We want to win the election. Yet we have a government that roll out policies which were provocative to citizens, which was almost mobilizing citizens to vote against our party. And I think that has to change. And for me, for that to change, the structures of the party has to be functional. The relationship between the party and the government has to be stronger. It should not be reduced to the question of the president only meeting the national chairman of the party. And look, like I said, it's an important question, but it's a very difficult question to really give a straightforward answer. It requires sets of action, but more importantly, all those actions must ensure that leaders are made more accountable. Maybe that will help. But we must also, if you ask me, remain confident that these are not problems that are insurmountable. They are problems that can be surmounted, which for me is part of the reason why I still remain committed to my party. I'm believing that we can continue to engage ourselves and find solutions to all these issues.
At the end of the day, it's all about governance, Mr. Lukman. At the end of the day, it's about how the lives of the people are affected. Now, you have talked about the party being supreme, but since this republic began, since this Fourth Republic began, it would seem like that particular ideology in our political system, in our democracy, has gone to the dogs, so to speak. The First Republic had very strong party influence on government. Same with the Second Republic, strong party influence on government. In the Third Republic as well, we had the same situation where the manifesto of the party was jointly, concocted and not just something done by just one individual. And consequently, the political party had a say in who occupies what office, rightly or wrongly, whether it worked or not. What do you think is responsible for the denigration of that particular ideology in this republic, where the party, the opinion or the supremacy of the party is under the influence of certain political elements, be it at the federal level or at the state level? What happened?
Well, first, I think if you play back very well, you'll find out between the period 1999 and 2003, the party is still very strong. I think the point where consciously, and I think it's under the PDP, the powers of the party were really, really trampled upon was after 2003, with all the experience where we were told former President Obasanjo had to struggle to win his ticket to recontest. And immediately he came in, he consciously had to make sure the structures of the party are subordinated to him. So he created, that created the current model. And for many of us who were part of the advocacy leading to the formation of APC, one of the things we had hoped was that the emergence of APC will begin to change all of that. I must admit, in a way, our APC is what it is today because we have failed. We have allowed dynamics to play out within the party that almost made nonsense of all the promises we made in 2015. Now, I think where we are now is for us to really, really, like I said in one of my writings, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to provoke a situation where we renegotiate what we have. And for me, when I said, I sat down, reflected, document, and the next thing after producing the book, I said, we must find a way to engage our leaders, which is why I said, okay, the book presentation has to be in a format and we are making every effort to get all our leaders there. So,
that's APC and transition politics.
APC and transition politics, which is why, for me, look, I'm not antagonizing our leaders. Yes, I'm critical, and I'm very, very open to now express my position, but I don't hide the fact that I want them to succeed. Because as a nation, their success is to the benefit of all citizens. Yeah. If they fail, we will be at the receiving end.
What lessons do you think this government should and can learn from the former one?
Look, I will talk in terms of my knowledge of Aswaju. You know, I still believe I know him very well. He is not somebody that, I mean, you will say he wouldn't listen. The question is, are we really engaging him in such a way that you will see all the side of the argument? Now, once we allow a situation where people lock him in the villa, those of us outside are not able to access him, you know, then we will not be able to get him to really apply himself in the way we expected that he will lead when we produce him as our candidate. And I don't mind moving towards 2027 openly to admit where we have failed, based on which, because we are human, based on which we are now planning how to really provide new leadership to Nigeria in such a way that we can't remain where we are forever.
So what do you expect him to do differently from the previous government?
Look. The first thing is that he must open himself and allow party structures to function. And when I say allow parties, we must not reduce parties to just an election vehicle. Go and read our constitution. You will find out that parties are supposed to make input in terms of policies of government. Now, all you hear, and that is why I flag up the warning, all you hear is permutation for next election. Because we are being held by the jugular by some election merchants. All they think is election. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in presenting myself to contest for election. My interest is to ensure that at the best, this country, because we have children, for goodness sake, we pay a lot for school fees, and after they finish, we can't find jobs for them. Is it the country we want? It's not.
So there's this thing that plays out. When, or assuming, if a president is from my part of the country, and then he's doing something, and I see that is wrong, then I keep quiet. Then it comes to another person's part of the country, they're doing something else, rather than speak up, they keep quiet. Or if the former president happens to be from my political party, and I take over, I see something wrong, and then chances are that maybe he or the hangers-on of the former president might call the current and say, look, don't touch A, B, C, D, and E. So how much of the blame goes to the people and not just the leaders?
Look, Mr. Chamberlain, I made the point earlier. Everything is about choices. I don't know the choice you make. I don't know the choice you make. I know the choice I make. And the choice I make is that I will relate with you without knowing, without bothering where you come from, what religion. And that, for me, first and foremost, you are a human being. Because in the first place, you don't even have a choice who your parents are. And by virtue of that fact, you were not the one that made the choice about your tribe, your religion, you know. And in terms of religion, which is a bit more complex, my understanding of it is that religion is about value, it's about lifestyle. I mean, if you read the history, how religion get convert, it's not about coming to sometimes. It's the lifestyle of the people who that convince others to now say, okay, I want to join this, I want to be like you.
Yeah, Mr. Lukman, but you see, this is the elephant in the room that we need to address as a country if we need to move forward. Because, yes, you have to make your own choices, but you need a critical mass. We need that critical mass of like minds, or people like that.
There are things there are things that are not produced out of debate. I mean, for instance, if I wait for the right signal to emerge for me to do what I will not do what I'm doing at all. As a person, I made my choice to say, well, look, I have limited time to spend in this world. And while I'm in this world, this is what I want to do. And in terms of engaging politics, I want to do it differently. Whether people agree with me or not, it's a different matter entirely. The most important thing, I'm not aspiring to destroy you or destroy anybody, which is why I made the point. I'm not critical of leaders so that I pull them down. I'm critical so that they get it right. Because if they get it right, in fact, I mean, many people, some 100 years down the line, will not remember that somebody called Salih Lukman was critical, which influenced the action of the leader. But people will remember that there was a president called President Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who took the right or wrong decision, and I hope it will be the right decision. And on account of that, he will be celebrated.
Yeah, so leaders must see criticisms as, just trying to ensure that things are done right. They have to be open to some of these things. And it's also important to know that at least we have to get our voices heard out there, which is what you're doing with your book, APC and Transition Politics. So we'll look forward to that. But that's the show today. I beg your pardon. We thank you for coming. We're looking forward to some of these narratives because there are several questions, really, that are out there that we haven't got answers for, of which we need to keep asking. And they need to also make themselves available to talk to the people because those are the promises they made, including the ones that are in MDAs and ministries. It is the people that you're accountable to. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
We're back in a moment. Don't go away.
The Lagos State Commissioner for Waterfront Infrastructure Development, Ekundayo Alibioshu, and his counterpart in charge of the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development, Oluyinka Olumide, kicks off the waterways inspection from the 5-carry terminal, Palomo. The assignment for the day is to identify illegal activities and unapproved construction ongoing on the waterways. The first stop is Queen's Drive in the Ikoyi area of Lagos Island, where a building under construction was sealed for contravening physical planning laws. The property owner was issued stop work order 2 weeks ago, but ignored the directive.
Because I knew about this, and someone was supposed to go up.
What was, and did they get clearance?
I don't know.
If they didn't get clearance, so who gave the resume work order? Who gave the resume work order?
Taking a view of Osborne Foreshore, Banana Island as well as Lekki Foreshore, while on the waterways to have a glimpse of property owners who've engaged in illegal dredging and land reclamation. After the inspection exercise, the Commissioner for Waterfront and Infrastructure Development asked developers to get approval before dredging.
We received several petitions, several complaints, and we're also doing what you call the oversight function of the ministries. I'm not saying we shouldn't dredge. We need to dredge sand. Sand is the second most sought after natural resource in the world after water. But the question or the issue that's involved here is that we need to control. We need to do sand search. We need to know where there's adequate sand. We need to control the number of people dredging there. We need to move elsewhere, and we should be able to tell them, okay, you have to live here for the next few years. Let it reclaim itself and move elsewhere. And that's the reason why we're saying there is need to control.
For the Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development, those found guilty of illegal construction will face the full wrath of the law.
Majority of them probably do not have approval, which we have marked, and we are going to compel them to do what is lawful. Those of them that have approval, because it's a waterfront property, they have extended beyond what was approved. Some of them have even gone building fairly above what was approved in terms of number of heights. So all these will stop the site, and they're going to meet us, we're going to review it, and they're going to be penalized according to the law.
Lagos is a low-lying area replete with structures that threaten the state due to climate change. The state government says it's ready to go after those involved in illegal construction to keep the city safe.
And that's our next conversation right now with Kundayo Bush-Alibioshu, who is the Commissioner for Waterfront Infrastructure Development in Lagos State. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, there are many people who cannot ride on water, so that must be a courageous thing that you did there. But, you know,
I was one of them.
Oh, you were one?
I was one of them.
Until you got the job.
Yes.
Okay. Now, perhaps for some understanding, when we talk about waterfront infrastructure, for those who are completely or maybe even slightly unaware, what are we talking about?
We're talking about different functions as established by law of the State Assembly. When it comes to building of jetties, building of terminals, channelization, amongst many other things, dredging activities, reclamation, land reclamation activities, and so on. Basically, we regulate, we handshake several ministries. For example, the Ministry of Tourism, we handshake them because we build the infrastructure. There's the service of tourism sits on. We handshake. We also handshake the Ministry of Transport in the sense that we build the jetties, and the water transportation sits on the infrastructure that we provide for. We also handshake physical planning, like you saw in the last clip you did. So from time to time, we work with various other ministries just to regulate and to make sure that, to provide for their infrastructure and to also regulate infrastructure on our waterfront.
Now, how challenging is this indiscriminate dredging and illegal land reclamation in Lagos? Because, you know, it is definitely something that should give at least some people some thinking. What exactly, for instance, in this case, what was happening?
There are different things. That was several weeks ago where there was ongoing construction along the waterfront. We had to make sure that all the documentations are in order. We don't want any issues, you know. And when people go for their planning approval, there's the requirement of clearance from the Ministry of Waterfront. You know, we work with physical planning a lot in the sense that we design the waterfront with its infrastructure, and we provide the Ministry of Physical Planning with our design, which is then inculcated in the Master Plan of Lagos. And in most climes, you see them reviewing those designs from time to time, because this is something that's very useful for, that speaks a lot to tourism. When you look at places like the Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire, you see they're quite, Togo, they're quite, Benin Republic, they're quite big on tourism. And in this part, we see from your very first question on the challenges of illegal reclamation and illegal dredging, it's quite, it's looking like an epidemic at the moment, and we have to clean up. We have no choice but to clean up. Illegal dredging is like the bunkering of the Niger Delta. Sand is the second most sought after natural resource in the world after water. We use it for a lot of things, toothpaste, underwear, and, amongst many building, roads, and so on. So there's this insatiable demand for sand. As a result, you see a lot of people reclaiming waterfront land is very much sought after, and you continue to see a lot of people doing illegal reclamation. And of course, for you to reclaim means you have to dredge, and it has its impact. It's one of the reasons why we don't see too many beaches at the moment. We have to dredge, but the issue is it has to be controlled. But just like oil, we need oil, but it has to be controlled.
One of the things that a number of people might be saying is that in most cases, government agencies are culpable. For instance, the story that we saw a little earlier of that, some building had already come up. Someone must have been observing. There are those who might also point to the negligence of government agencies who are supposed to be monitoring these activities. If, for instance, the job has gotten to quite some distance and no one was able to do anything about it until the time that you had to go there, then there's a lot of questions to ask. That building, for instance, didn't come up under 1 week. Must have been a number of months and a number of other things like that. So who is monitoring? Well, how is the monitoring done in such a way that that kind of building will come up that high and your ministry is just finding out?
Well, to be honest with you, anywhere you go to in the world, you'd always encounter things like that. Maybe not that high, but you'd always encounter such things. And that's why there's the need for that oversight function that we did. There's need for adequate monitoring on one hand. And then on the other hand, you have different ministries, you have different government agencies, not just ministries, at the federal level, at the state level. And I've seen different cases of people who are actually trying to be mischievous or who have actually tried to be mischievous. I have seen cases of people who are not sure that we've had to enlighten further and better. Some are just of the opinion that you need certain clearances from just the federal government, not realizing that you need those clearances as well from the state's government as well. So there are different reasons why different infractions are committed, and that's why we also have penalties based on the intention. You can always tell the intention. You can't jump on water and start to reclaim land. For example, there are two reasons why people dredge: to either reclaim or to stockpile. We've seen cases where people actually reclaim land claiming to be for the purpose of stockpiling. And what happens is when they're all sold out, what happens to the land? Who gave you the permission to have done that in the first place? So now there's some level of synergy happening, and that's why, since I got there, the team I have at the Ministry of Waterfront have been quite very, very supportive. They've been cooperative, and that's why we've been spending about 3 days on water on a weekly basis, and that has helped us capture. We've seen everything we want to see at the moment. It's just a case of moving in for enforcement. And the whole structure of the ministry is basically monitoring, enforcement, and a lot of communication.
Talking about communication.
Correct.
There are those who would believe or hold the opinion that the only reason government would want to, license or levy and get approvals and all of that is just to raise revenue. No more, no less. You want to dredge, you want to construct anything. Government wants to collect money from you only because they have to meet their internal revenue quota. How do you respond to that?
To be honest with you, if you're not in the room, you probably will not understand what is being said in the room, literally. We're experiencing a lot of issues at the moment. We're dealing with global warming. We're dealing with climate change. Being aided by illegal dredging, illegal reclamation, amongst many other things. And we're feeling the impact economically, environmentally. I haven't gone out. I have reports showing that at a point in time, the water to the shore was over 1 kilometer away. Now it's under 100 meters away. It's as close in some areas as 50 meters. And there are two main issues: the natural issues, which is an imbalance in the coastal dynamics, which is wind, currents, and then you have the issue, the man-made issue, which is causing a lot of problems. Now, if you go to a place called Okunde, which is along the Oniru axis, you would see that because of the constant dredging, the indiscriminate dredging, it's natural for wherever has been dredged to have it's compensated for. So what happens is it's as if nature sends water to go in search of sand to compensate for what has been dredged. And the very first point of call are the beaches. Once it mops up the sand there, where does it go? It goes onto the roads, it goes to properties and things like that. Now, there are several things we would have to do, amongst other things. It's not just a one-stop shop thing. You have groynes, and that's what you see. So far, Lagos State has done about 7.3 kilometers of groynes, which are rocks that have to be arranged in a particular way. And then the Eco-Atlantic City has also put in place about 7.2-ish. In total, we have about 15.5 kilometers of groynes, and we have 180 kilometers of coastline to place them in. 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer is about several months ago was about average cost of about 11 point something billion naira. Now multiply that by 180 kilometers. We're talking huge amount here. Where does the funding come from? So you can only deal with, you can regulate, you can only raise the funding from those activities. And I think it's only fair to regulate well and to demand for those revenues from those who are, the major, who are the ones contributing to the human angle of the issues we're dealing with. It's impacting seriously on tourism. It's impacting seriously on even the price of food. Sometimes I've heard people say, well, it has to do with those who live by the waterfront area. No, because every time you dredge, you're killing the microorganisms, which is food for fish on the waterbed. So, and then you're also disturbing aquatic life. And when it's done constantly, what happens is you have the fish moving away. The fishermen have to go through a lot. It's affecting even the fishermen economically. Fish you ordinarily would probably have had to pay 500 naira for, you're paying about 7,000 naira for, because of what they have to go through. So it affects all of us eventually.
Sometimes there are those who are watching right now, and one of the opinions that they have is that there are three classes of people in our society.
Correct.
First, there is government, then there is the people, and then there are those who have access, who have the privilege of access to power. So if those, if it's government that does it, it's okay. Those who have access to privilege of, knowing someone, in high places like maybe yourself and all of that, government agencies give them orders, they don't obey those orders. But if it's the ordinary man who doesn't know anyone or have anyone in any privileged office, they can. So how are you managing those ones as well? Because at the end of the day, anyone who does it, there shouldn't be no exceptions to the law. No one should be above the law.
I absolutely agree. I haven't experienced that, and fair is fair. I should let you know that since resuming office, there hasn't been anything that I have asked of the governor that he has not granted, to say you have to go after what's happening. When the heavens fall, it's not just going to fall on certain people, it's going to fall on everybody. Who are the first people to actually feel the heat? They're the people who live by the waterfront areas. And these are the people you're talking about being close to government, because those are prime properties. And they're the ones that the governor is saying, listen, there have been a few cases where even the governor has had to go physically to say, get that out of there, get that out of there, get that out of there. He's given marching orders to say, listen, get the job done by any means necessary. But I can understand that certain things we've gone through a lot to get where we are right now. So we understand that to a certain extent, you expect certain things. You know, there are people who are gifted with the ability to see things that have not started to exist. And there are people who are gifted with the ability to see things that would never exist. So in some cases, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'd be a hypocrite to sit here and say those things don't happen. But I haven't experienced that. That's the much I can say. I think it's only fair to say the much that I know.
Now, you talked about communication.
Correct.
One of the reasons that is important is that generally trust between government and the people has greatly ebbed. And building that is a lot of work. In the areas where you are concerned, how are you intending, or how are you working on that? Particularly because a large chunk of the people that you have to deal with are in rural areas. The Ekwe axis, Badagry axis, Butemeta axis. Most people, you have larger populations of people living in undeveloped areas. You know, the Butemeta axis, for instance, and all those other areas. How are you going to communicate to them in a way that they will understand what you're doing and trust that you have their interest at heart?
One of the things I've realized, I've been at this for a while, and one of the things I've gotten to realize is people support you for different reasons. If you're a known name, there's some level of trust there. If they believe you know what you're doing, much more level of trust. If they know that you're qualified to do what you're doing, and that's the reason why if somebody were to slum here and somebody just comes and says, listen, do this, do this, do this, I'm a medical doctor, they trust your intentions. Now, of the 20 local governments in Lagos, 15 of those 20 local governments have water going through them. So it's not a case of just being rural areas. We're talking 3/4 of Lagos has water running through it. And if we don't do anything about it, it's actually having to put things before them. And what we're doing right now is also some level of communication to those who are listening to understand its impact. It's affecting things like employment. How do I mean? Gambia has a population, I love using Gambia, has a population of 2.1 million people. And they have about 300,000 tourists coming through their country. They could have more, but because of food security, those who come are also going to depend on the food that's meant to be for the citizenry. So what they do at the end of the day is regulate the number of people who come annually. When you divide 300,000 people over a 12-month period, it means you're dealing with, you're talking about 25,000 foreigners coming in on a monthly basis. And that's for a population of 2.1 million people. Look at the population of Lagos, and let's assume that we have the same number coming in. Do you know how it affects? People go to New York, and the first thing they want to do is have the hot dog. In Nigeria, I've seen people talk about, when the last time I was in Nigeria, I had the bread and akara. That was really nice. Foreigners talking about that. It impacts everybody everywhere. When tourism is big, it means there's more employment. It creates more employment. But they are not the communities are not the one who are involved in these activities. We're just informing them so that they're able to let us know, to inform us, because it's not easy to monitor all of Lagos at the same time. You need to monitor before you can enforce. And we've started to do that sometime in the first quarter of next year. We're planning on having a summit. We have been engaging with the big dredging companies. We've come up with new policies, and those are the things we plan on, that we from this December, we just got an approval to put things out there and also to begin to carry out some enforcements.
Now, how about corruption? Yeah. Some of your, I'm sorry, I mean, you're the one on the hot seat, but
it's all right.
You cannot take away the fact that there will be some form of corruption. I talked about the fact that that building couldn't have come up so high within such a short time if there was no connivance one way or the other. And you have talked about the fact that some people go ahead and do this dredging and illegal land reclamation without permits and all of that. Mm-hmm. In some cases they actually do have permits, whether rightly or wrongly. And those permits don't come from under the bus. They definitely come from one agent, let me not say agency now, one agent of government or the other. How are you managing that? How prevalent is that particular one in the activities of your agency?
Corruption this is not my own opinion, seems to be a cultural thing. And the way we see corruption seems to be different from individuals. However, I would tell you, I stand bold to tell you that those who are dredging, less than 3% of them actually have licenses, based on what I saw while I was monitoring on the waters. It was very clear. We went back, we checked, and that's why we're coming with new policies to actually address those issues. Remember, man was not made for laws. Laws are made for man. And for every time you see that there's need to change certain things, come up with new policies, you would have to. I said earlier on, for example, that in places like Singapore, that are big on the waterfront, Singapore, the Dutch, and so on. Every 5 years, they change, they tweak with their waterfront designs and things. This is to continue to attract people. In this case, we are dealing with still the rudiments, and we have to continue to adjust, which is what we have just done. We're putting a review of the law. We'll be putting that through to the State Assembly to say, listen, this law is several years old. It's not as effective as it should be. I'll give you a quick instance. In the past, you just needed to pay a certain amount of money, and your dredging licenses would be approved, and once you've satisfied all the requirements, and then you begin to dredge. But now we're saying, no, that's not going to happen anymore. On our own, we need to carry out sand searches, and from there, it's not enough to say I have paid your levies. We need to know the amount of sand that's being pulled out from underneath us. We need to monitor it. Just like the blood diamond, you need to trace it from the beginning to when it gets even to the sites. The tippers, the trucks that are carrying them need to have certificates so we know who actually dredged, who stockpiled, and who went to buy from there. We would need that. That's amongst many other things that I wouldn't want to put out here right now. It would be like you want to fight something and you're already giving them your strategy. You're preparing them. So I wouldn't want to go that deep into it. But we are continuing to, new things continue to come up. We're preparing for, I'm looking into several years ahead, dangers we have not started to see now, but that are there, but will not surface for maybe another 5 years.
Well, digging those roots, would actually take a lot of collaboration. You talked about the fact that, the federal government, some people think that certain responsibilities are under the purview of the federal government, while they are actually under the state government. But I don't know if that's part of the question that Chamberlain wants to ask you this morning. Chamberlain.
Empower corruption as much as we can in ministries or MDAs, whichever the case. All of these things you mentioned, and perhaps you tell us, can we find it on the website or Lagos State Government platform or somewhere, such that if I were listening to you and I was a dredger or I plan to be one, can I find the process from start to finish, what it requires, so that no one can be untoward, no one can ask me for something that is not stipulated?
To be honest, Chamberlain, we are currently working on that. I think it's just one or two things we need to clear with the State Assembly so that at that point we can proceed to posting them on the websites. These are requirements that we expect you should be able to go on and get out of there. A major issue before now was that people were confused as to where to go, not just the requirements. We've had this ongoing issue between Naira and not just Lagos, but coastal states. And it went through the first, Naira got, they won the first at the High Court. The next was at the appeal court, which Lagos State won. Now, Naira is back in court, not to challenge the ruling, but for interpretation of some parts of the ruling. And I think that comes up in January, on the 5th of January or thereabout, if I'm right. So I'd want to be careful so as not to preempt anything. But we've started to communicate with those of the people. We met with the association a couple of, I would say, about 6 weeks or thereabout ago. And we also decided to meet with the major players, the heavy hitters in that industry, who have also subjected themselves to the regulatory functions of the state. However, I'm also aware that certain areas would have to be regulated by the federal government, as certain areas will be regulated by the state. However, it's expected that for every administration should be better than the previous, not because it's a competition, but it just signifies progress. So some of the things that weren't there in the past are things we're putting in place now for the present. And I expect that the administration that would come after us, I expect would be better than what we've done now, just to show progress, Chamberlain.
I think that, Lagos State authorities will also like the support of citizens as much as possible to ensure that the right things are done. And
Absolutely.
Probably also look out for yourself and to ensure that members of the ministry of the authorities do the right things. Now, if I were a resident in one of those areas and I see people coming in to dredge, that's why we ask, what are the stipulations? What's the requirement? How do I know who is doing something legal or illegal, so that if I were to be an interested whistleblower, I can highlight all of those? So are there platforms or numbers or anything that people can reach out and say, look, calling the authorities' attention to certain things going on wrong, so that everybody sees that something transparent is happening there?
I got some of what you said there, Chamberlain. I can only assume the rest of what you, because I lost audio there, but from some of the things you had said, definitely the first partnership we're going to have is going to be with fishermen. They're the ones who are greatly affected on water. Communities as well. For example, if you look at the Beshe Road, it was it was a well thought out and very well executed road construction project carried out. But it's completely damaged as a result of dredging activities that have been going on there. And we have been receiving, well, on my personal phone line, I've been receiving calls from, I think the permanent secretary also reported this, members of the department, of that department that deals with dredging in the ministry, had also reported, because they've been there for a bit, have also reported that different people have been calling them. The reason we had called to a meeting the association and some of the heavy hitters was to get feedback from them on how to regulate them. I mean, you can't shave a man's hair behind his back. So we called them in, we let them understand that the point was not to drive them out of business, but to help aid their business, to regulate things where it becomes a win-win situation for everybody. The legal dredgers, the legal reclaimers, and also government, as well as the community. But so far, I think we've received a few letters. Some things have come in writing, and I've also gotten several phone calls. I would put the number at about 24 phone calls from some of various communities from across. Also, we're not sitting pretty in the office. We're going on water. And without going on water, we're not going to, I mean, we can't monitor if we don't go on water. And if we don't monitor, we can't enforce. So it's become a duty. It has become a norm for us to go on water a minimum of 2 to 3 days in the week. We work even on Saturdays. A lot of Saturdays we go to work. It's been so far since resumption, it's been a 6-day working week for us. And I have to continue to appreciate the efforts and the support of members of the ministry.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm how many people you said were licensed dredgers in Lagos State.
So far, I would say from what we've seen, just under 3%. Because of the issues that had happened in the past, that had the court cases and all that, some decided to hide under that and decided to continue dredging without permits. And that's what we're going out. And within the next few days, we would begin to see and feel the long arm of the law.
Oh, okay, so just to confirm also, if there's anything being done around, because I know you are responsible for water infrastructure, but as a result of the dredging activities that happen in many communities, whatever infrastructure was present in that community on the land usually gets impacted by the activities of dredgers. Is there any way to collaborate between your ministry and perhaps in the Ministry of Works? Because, for instance, if you have roads that led to, where the dredgers were operating, those roads are impacted and sometimes become impassable as a result of the activities of trucks carrying sand away from where the dredgers are working. So do you see any avenue for collaboration between yourself and the Ministry of Works to ensure that the impact is minimized in the communities that are affected by dredging?
Oh, absolutely. This has been an ongoing thing, and since resuming, it's even been stronger. We've been out on water with a few ministries. One of the ones you saw was going out on water with the commissioner and the team from tourism, with the team of Waterfront infrastructure development. For example, there's no way on earth that we would issue a reclamation permit without having the buying of environment. They issue the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. The Ministry of Environment also demands for the drainage design. Physical planning also, we inform them and we work with them. We get their sign-off when it comes to the urban development and things like that. Works as well. We have several meetings. We've had several meetings. Even with a couple of weeks ago, we had a roundtable. Physical planning, Ministry of Transport, the Lands Bureau, Waterfront Infrastructure Development, Office of the State Surveyor General, and these are meetings that we have regularly. I mean, these challenges will continue to come up. And in some cases, we have to be proactive. In some cases, I mean, we have to be reactive. So as they come, we deal with them.
Okay. Well, if you can take this under a minute or so, there's this conversation going on between the Lagos State government and some beneficiaries of some residential work, regional waterfront development, regional waterfront estate and stuff like that. How many of those issues are you having to deal with, particularly in line with what the commissioner, of I think in charge of the urban development also going around, pulling down buildings that are and estates that are on the coastal path?
Well, it's in man's characteristics to be dishonest. And I'm sure you'd agree with me that in mosques and in churches, not everybody who you worship with abide by the rules of God. So where they don't abide by the rules of God, what do you expect to happen with the rules of man? And the only way we can make sure that we are able to effectively come up with a sane, decent, and workable society is just to make sure that we enforce well. And what you saw, the Ministry of Environment do pulling down properties. He didn't pull down properties that had the permits, the necessary permits. He pulled down properties that were constructed or built on drainages, amongst other things. And the moment some of these buildings were pulled down, it became a completely different ballgame. I lost the number of hours we lose to traffic. That drainage blocking up, you'd be amazed what this action done here will do to how it impacts further down the line.
Okay. But there are so many other issues to raise with you, particularly in the light of new towns developments, coming up with some estates and approving about 720 civil servants and all, but maybe some other time we'll take that on. We have to thank you at this time. Kundayo Abioshu is Commissioner for Waterfront Infrastructure Development in Lagos State. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
We're back in a moment to take on one last issue. To stay with us.
All right, let's take a look at some messages. This one is from Kelson, who says, one of the guests said the president should make himself more available. Well, Kelson thinks this will solve nothing, as the president can't attend to everyone, even if he's available all day, every day, especially in a nation as large as ours. We simply must move as much power as possible away from Abuja. People need to be able to live their lives and even start businesses while engaging minimally, if at all, with state and federal structures. This would also solve the tribal issues. Most tribal tension are the results of people weaponizing whatever they can to get their struggles addressed. This will happen more effectively at the level of over 700 LGAs than the few dozen higher tier levels. As much power as possible needs to be moved to states and especially local government level.
I certainly agree with that. You can't fault that email. Thank you so much for sending it in. I'm also looking at this one from Professor Inakena Jr., who says, and is also following the same line, calls for restructuring. He says, why do regions that produce the president suddenly become stoical and nonchalant in criticizing the office of president to improve our economic policies and maladministration, equitable allocation of resources and appointments, irrespective of where you garner the highest number of votes? For example, this government has 10 ministers from Northwest and 5 from Southeast, while a single state like Ogun has 3 ministerial slots. It doesn't have to be this way. Government has the responsibility to conform to the true tenets of practical democratic ethos, or we degenerate into what Chinua Achebe wrote, there was a country. So those are some of the observations from some of our viewers this morning. We thank you so much for sending them in.
Yes, indeed. And so we also do thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Chamberlain, so happy holiday to you all. Yeah.
Oh, Chamberlain has officially started giving people holidays. I'm looking at you, Chamberlain. And I say happy holiday and go from here.
Take that to the bank.
If you don't see me from here tomorrow, you heard what he said. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maupwe Yusuf.
What you do in the bank, Maupwe, is to store. So you should store that information and not use it immediately. And we also acknowledge your message, Ashina Kingsley. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and bye for now.